and welcome to Tech presented by KYZEN, where we will explore common cleaning questions and answers. Let's get started. I would like to introduce KYZEN's own Scott Cain.
Good day, everybody. Thank you for taking a few minutes out of your time to spend with Kaizen in our Tech to Tech series. We hope that you find the next 10 to 12 minutes informative, maybe a little entertaining, and hopefully lead to some questions and improving in the process. So, today we're going to spend some time talking about durability versus reliability and a purpose driven cleaning process. And how can we have both? Let's talk real quick just what we're talking about between durability and reliability. When we speak of durability, we're really talking about the life of the chemistry, making sure that you're getting value out of the chemistry. We're using it as much as we can, we're not using too much. And then reliability, we're making sure that we're creating boards that are up to the standards of both you and your customer. And we're seeing if you can have both, and if so, how does that look? So, first off, we're going to ask, what do these things have in common? Got some golfing and going to concerts and maybe some fishing and hanging out on a boat. Well, these are all things that I wish I had more free time to do. And you may be asking, well, Scott, we're not really needing your personal bio right now. How does this relate? Well, this relates because it is the number one question that I get asked is how long will my chemistry last? And the truth is, there's no answer for everyone on that. It's actually line by line if you've got multiple inlines because there's so many variables involved. Those variables include everything from the number of boards being cleaned to the type of boards, the size of the boards, how they're placed inside of the machine, some specifics on the machine, batch or inline, and between the individual manufacturers, there's some variance. We want to know all this. What kind of paste, what kind of flux is being used? All of these things can have an effect on the process. You can see here things like markings and labels and solder mask. You know, when we come to the cleaning chemistry, it's not just what the chemistry is, but what temperature are we using? How are we putting that on? What's our impingement factor? What kind of equipment, temperature? All these things build up to get clean assemblies. And so there's a lot of variables that go into this. So there's not going to be one answer that works for everybody on how long the chemistry is going to last. So let's think about what the goal is and how do we get there. The goals include a long life of the chemistry. You want to make sure that you're getting the chemistry to last as long as possible. You want your boards to be reliable. That's what your customers expect, or that's what your management expects. And so we want to make sure that we're following and hitting reliability requirements in house. We want a value for the chemistry. Look, we know we have to spend money on it, but let's make sure we're getting it to last as long and we're finding the right concentration for it and using the chemistry that's in line with what the application requires. We want a really easy process. The more we can get the process taken care of and repeatable, that's going to make it easier going forward and you're not going to have as many maintenance issues. Obviously, we want really clean boards. That's kind of, why we're here and what does clean boards look like for your team? And finally, we want an efficient process. That's everything from the chemistry to the time to the amount of water that's going in. We want that to be as efficient as possible so it's, most cost effective. So let's kind of take each of these words individually and then we'll put it together. So what are the reliability goals? How do we achieve those? And part of that, there's a couple different things that go into that. Determining the correct chemistry and the concentration and understanding your machine, right? So these things work together. And what we want to first do is make sure that we're hitting whatever cleanliness parameters has been set forward, whether that's IPC numbers or something that's been determined individually. We want to make sure we're hitting those numbers with those understanding of the chemistry and the machine constructs. And once we do that, now we know what this number is. We know what it looks like. So if we can get to the point where we're repeating that, we're going to have better reliability. So at that point, we want to implement consistent process control methods And we want to make sure that everybody that's on the team or anybody that has anything to do with cleaning understands what goes into these process controls. Those are everything from chemistry concentration to how the boards are put in to the water quality to how often we're testing it to the ventilation, et cetera, et cetera. And then one final point is we want to make sure we communicate any changes to the build. All the different pastes and fluxes that are out there, there is some variability in terms of how they're cleaned, what chemistry, what concentration, how long they need to be in the system, etc. And every time that a new one's brought in, it's really good to communicate that information to your chemistry provider so that they can confirm that the process that's in place is going to work. Now let's look at it from the other side. How do we achieve these durability goals that we're talking about with the chemistry? So we know from a reliability point of view what the process needs to be. Now, how do we make sure that the chemistry doesn't disrupt the reliability demands? And that's going to be a lot of process control will confirm the life of the chemistry. And what we're looking at with that control are the following. The following things are very important to make sure that the chemistry is working as it would on batch 500 or pump hour 500 as it would on pump hour 1. First is the concentration, checking to make sure that the concentration is staying in line with what we started with. We want to check that pretty much daily, if not every other day. We want to have that, and it's a good idea to log that information just for auditing purposes. Surface tension, we want to make sure that the chemistry can get the water droplet size low enough to get under the components and get through. Alkalinity ratio, usually once we see this go 2 to 1, it's about time to change the chemistry. And then NVR is non-volatile residues. And kind of the easiest way to think about non-volatile residues is if you make a beautiful lasagna and now you've got the pan sitting in the sink and you're going to wash it by hand. You add some dish soap to it, and historically, you have to add a little more dish soap after washing for a little bit. Well, if before you added that second group of dish soap, if you took a cup and took a drink of that water, that soap water, you would taste soap, but also in your mind, you already know it's not efficient because what's happened is that dish soap has already collected all the contamination it can and it's loaded up, is the word that we use. And really, that's what NVR is. So, what we want to check is how loaded the chemistry is because it can be within concentration, but after time, it gets loaded where there's not enough hungry chemistry that's working out there. So there's two different ways we do this. One is we do a 6 sample bottle, and what we would advise is, from the beginning where you put new chemistry in, and we would work on the numbers on this, but maybe every 2 weeks or every 50 or 75 pump hours, we'd ask you to take a sample. And then once we've collected those samples for the 12-week period or 300, 400 pump hours, we'll send that into our lab in Nashville, Tennessee. They'll take that information and they'll compare from the virgin starting point all the way through what's going on in the process. And we can start to track what's going on with the chemistry in your exact application. Gives us a good idea as to when it's going to get loaded, what's happening with the surface tension, the alkalinity ratio, etc. The other side of that is once you see that the cleanliness has started to drop, it's always a good idea to send us a sample of that because that tells us, okay, this is too far. So we want to find out what the numbers are with this, and then we can just move that number back maybe 10% to protect ourselves on the envelope. And that way we're able to continue to run boards through till we hit this envelope point. As long as we're controlling all the other process things we talked about, then we know that the chemistry is going to last until that point. And now, instead of me just saying, hey, replace it every 3 months or every 6 months, now we have actually data driven results as to when to change that. But what do we do with this information, right? The goal is to find the sweet spot where the chemistry is in the process until it's the end of its effectiveness. We don't want to push that too far because if we push that too far, then we're going to run into quality issues. Boards are going to have to be reran with new chemistry, and you could end up with a bottleneck at that process. So, implementing a database chemistry replacement program confirms the combination of your value of your chemistry and the quality expectations of yourself your customers, and your management team. So instead of doing it just based off of nothing, let's do this from a scientific point of view to confirm that the chemistry is lasting. So, kind of in summary, look, it would be real easy for me to just to say a number and say replace it that often, but finding the life of your chemistry does take a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of trial, but the goal is for the long term, you're going to spend less money on your chemistry. You're going to be able to have a longer process time, and you're going to be able to get the cleanliness and the reliability that you're looking for. This is gonna allow full confidence that the chemistry is being utilized to its full life cycle, and you're gonna be able to meet your cleanliness demands. So, just a couple other things here. We're here to help. Both the chemistry suppliers and the machine manufacturers are experienced in all aspects of the cleaning process. So reach out. Let us be an extension of your engineering department. Don't call me about an AOI. Don't call me about a pick and place. I don't know too much about those. But this stuff we know pretty well and we love talking about it. So we want to help you guys out. Just a couple questions that we usually get with this. How does one do the testing discussed, especially the NVR? And as I mentioned, there's you know historically we most customers will send that in to our facility. It usually takes about 2 weeks from the time we receive that to get that back, but it's a really nice document that you can utilize as kind of a guide moving forward. Can these tests be done at the customer location? Obviously, you can check your concentration. Depending on what the chemistry is, we'll either do that with a split kit or a visual testing. And then we can also do the NVR can be done at your location. It involves the investment of buying a HE53, which is just a moisture analyzer. It's usually about $4,000. But that can be done in about an hour at your facility if it's something you're really looking for. And then surface tension can be done, with the surface tension markers and stuff like that. We can do that. And then finally, are there any suggestions for keeping the concentration at the correct level? We have a really beautiful piece of equipment called the PCS. And what that does is that constantly checks the concentration of the material that's in your process anytime the pump is running. And what it will do is it will not only uh, register what the concentration is, if it gets out of line, it will add water or chemistry as necessary to get to that point. One of the other beautiful things about this is it documents the concentration constantly. So for any auditing or any issues that may happen with the customer, if they come back and say, "Hey, I need to know what the concentration was in August of 2019," you can go onto that machine, pull what the concentration is, and show them documented information that what the concentration was, and it was within line of their specification. So thank you so very much for your time.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you all for watching this Tech to Tech session. If you would like to discuss this topic further or have any questions that weren't answered in the session, please contact your local Kaizen regional manager or send an email to tech@kaizen.com, and we will have someone follow up with you as soon as possible. Do you want to have exclusive access to future content sent directly to your inbox, or do you know someone who would benefit from these sessions? If the answer is yes, just go to tech2tech.kaizen.com and fill out that subscription form. And if you like this video, be sure to follow us on our social media platforms for more expert cleaning content.